help me out here. How many here have a family or friends who no longer go to church? Let me just get a little show of hands. Yeah, that's kind of what I expected. Almost everybody does, right? I mean, I can't tell you how many times people, I've heard, yeah, this person doesn't go to church, and they say it sort of apologetically. Does that bother you? Yeah. But let me ask you a question. Do you think they would be called disciples of Jesus? Listen, this is how all will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. And we've heard countless times that the greatest of all commandments is loving God with all our hearts, all our soul, and loving our neighbor as ourselves, right? Now, what does love look like? Well, Jesus tells us in Matthew 25, in this parable where, you separate the goats and the sheep is going to bring in, and the goats he's telling hit the road. And the sheep are saying, why us? Why, what do we do? And the response is, I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. And I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. And I was naked, and you clothed me. And you were just nice to me, right? That's what love is. But you know what surprises me about today's gospel? That Jesus didn't say something like, hey, this is how all will know that you're one of my disciples. If you're in the synagogue all the time, in church all the time, if you receive all the sacraments regularly, if you study the Bible, if you become a deacon. He didn't say any of that, right? You know what else surprises me? Not once does Jesus say, worship me. Go look in the Gospels. Not once. That surprises me as well. But you know what doesn't surprise me? He's very clear on this. He says, this is my commandment. Now, he's not saying this is a good idea. He's not saying this is a suggestion or if I were you, I would do this. No, this is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. That's the litmus test here. So I want you to think about those people we all know who don't come to church, and ask yourself think about one of them or two of them, and just ask, how does this person treat others? Do they respect others? Do they go out of their way to help others in need? Are they kind to others? That's another way of saying, do they love others? And if the answer is yes, I think Jesus would be pretty happy with that. What do you think? What do you think? Now look, don't get the wrong idea, right? Don't get the wrong idea. I am not saying that sacraments aren't important. I'm not. But what I am saying is sacraments are an incredibly important means to an end. But I'm also trying to be very clear. The end is loving God and loving our neighbor. That's the means for it. Sacraments are not some kind of check-the-box thing that you get enough of them, enough tickets, so when we die, we come face-to-face with Jesus, and we lay out, hey, I went to Mass this many times, received this many sacraments, went to confession this many times, said this many rosaries. If that's all we got, we also know what that response is going to be. Because in Matthew 7, when Jesus just told some people who were thinking they're going to heaven, he says, no heaven for you. And they're saying, wait a minute. Didn't we prophesy in your name? Didn't we do all these great things in your name? Didn't we cure people? Didn't we cast out demons in your name? Didn't we do all of that in your name? And Jesus' response is, Depart from me, you evil one. If that's all you got, sorry, no heaven for you. Now, look, the other thing I want to say about sacraments is this. Sacraments are also not some sort of formula or recipe for getting to heaven after we die. But sacraments are how we experience heaven today, not just after we die. And you're saying, really, Tony, this is heaven? Yeah. Listen, let's walk through this. All right. Let's say you're going, and I'll talk about sacraments in a little more, but let's say you're doing this. You get with someone, a stranger, and you're giving them something to eat because they're hungry, right? What would you say? Would you say that you're loving them? Yes? Wouldn't that be right? I mean, we just heard, yeah. All right. Now, and don't we all describe that after we die, we will be with God in heaven, right? So whenever we are with God, that's where heaven is. Heaven and God are kind of together, right? And we say God is love. Am I right? Yeah. So if we are experiencing love, giving and receiving love, it's another way of saying we are experiencing God here on earth today. And it's another way of saying we're experiencing heaven. Now, some of y'all are saying, really, Tony, I'm not buying that. Okay. Look, here's the deal. For those who are married, think about that day when you stood there with your soon-to-be spouse and you experienced that love. Now you tell me that's not heaven on earth. And mothers, you think about the first time you held that baby in your arms and the love was just so thick you could walk on it, and you try to tell me that's not heaven on earth. See, that's what sacraments are. Look, all of these sacraments, all sacraments are grace, which is help, and signs. But they're grace and help and signs to help us love our neighbor, not simply for me to get to heaven. Let's walk through some of them. Let's look at baptism. In baptism, we're anointed priest, prophet, and king, right? Again, a grace. But the anointing is also a sign of who we are, who we were created to be. Priest. Now, be a priest, I'm not saying we're going to be like Father Ralph, right? Father Ralph is special. But being a priest means prayer and leading others in prayer. And as St. Teresa of Lisieux says, prayer is a surge of the heart, a simple turn toward heaven, a cry of recognition and love, embracing both trial and joy. So prayer is a surge of the heart. It's an affair of the heart. So it calls us to not only have a heart of loving others, but it's to help others love others as well. And prophet doesn't mean, let me make sure you understand, prophet doesn't mean we're going to know the lottery ticket numbers, okay? It doesn't mean that. And it doesn't mean we're just going to be running around citing scripture. Prophet means we're speaking for God. And nothing speaks louder than our actions, right? So it means that we're getting a sign that we are supposed to act with love at all times. That's who we are. It's who we were created to be, loving God and loving neighbor. And king is not the kind of king where people serve us. It's a servant king. Look at Jesus. He served others. You know, he fed 5,000 people. He was servant. That's what we're called to do. That's what we are built to do, is to serve others. Let's look at confession. What happens when we're all racked with guilt and we feel bad about some mistake we made or sin or whatever you want to call it? Where's our focus when we're getting that place? I don't know about you, but for me, my focus is right here with me. If my focus is turned inward because I'm struggling with that, then how am I going to notice the people around me to even know what they need? I'm likely to walk right past them and not notice. So confession is about unburdening ourselves so we can take our attention away from us and look at the people around to serve them. Eucharist, critically important, critically important. Here's what I want you to think about. One phrase I've heard, and I love it. It says, we become what we eat. So as we're coming up to receive the Eucharist, look up there. We're coming up to receive the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus so that someday, or maybe through some evolution, we can love as Jesus loved. We can be as Jesus is, or more like Jesus is. And we're called to do that so that we become more loving, not just with people we know, but with people we don't know. Not with people we like, but also with people we don't like. Not with people who look like us, but people who don't look like us. Because if we're going to love our neighbor, it doesn't matter how different they are. The other thing about the Eucharist that's so critically important I want to think of is we receive the body, blood, and soul, and divinity of Christ in here. And then we're called to go out, right? If we're going to become like Jesus. Here's the other thing that I love. You know what? In the Gospels, we are told 20 times Jesus saying, follow me, follow my lead. And also in John 7, we hear, you know what? You do this stuff, you're going to do the works I did and even greater. So if we're following Jesus' lead, let's look at where he performed some miracles, right? First of all, where did he feed the 5,000? In the synagogue or outside the synagogue? Outside, yeah. And where did he cure lepers? Inside the synagogue or outside the synagogue? Right? Where did he cast out demons? Inside the synagogue or outside the synagogue? You see a pattern there? It's always outside. So when we receive Jesus, we are called to take what we receive and go out there so even the strangers recognize that we're disciples of Christ. I could go on, but I got to do marriage. I got to do marriage, right? Marriage, you say, oh, that's just between a man and a woman. No, it's not. Here's what marriage is. Marriage is a practice field. It's a place to come together, or not a place, a relationship that's very focused. So the husband and the wife, spouses, come together and learn how to love each other so much that we become one, which is an answer to Jesus' prayer, Father, let them be one as you and I are one. So that husband and wife come together and they learn and they work for the rest of their lives to grow so close that they become one. But they're not there, that's not so that they can become one. It's so that they can then turn around and share that with their children and then try to become one with their children. And if we can master that, or the more we learn about that, then we can go out to strangers and try to become one with them. That's what all of these sacraments are about. I could do the same thing with holy orders or sacrament of the sick. You get the picture. The sacraments are here not to be us to kind of collect and hold internally. It's to enable us to go out and do what we are commanded to do. I want to just suggest that we try this week, just a few times during the week. Step back and ask yourself, look, if someone that I don't know was observing how I acted at work, in the grocery store, how I drove, what would they say? Would they be able to recognize us as disciples of Christ?